Hello everyone and welcome to Economic Impact. Today is July 11, 2024 and as usual I am with our Chief Economist Stéfane Marion. Good morning, Stéfane.
Good morning, Denis.
Once again, we're going to start with the performance of the stock market.
Yeah, it's been
going well, huh?
Yeah, it's been a hot summer, not just temperature-wise. Stock market is on fire. We have records pretty much everywhere around the planet. Notice, Denis, if we focus on the U.S., it's up 17% up this year, but driven by sectors, two sectors in particular. It's anything related to IT or technology, media, and telcos. Yeah,
and they're doing very, very well compared to the rest of the other sectors.
Massively well, so much so that their market share of the TMT sector now accounts for 40% of the S&P 500's valuation, which is a big deal, Denis, because we haven't seen this in 20 years. So keep this in mind. It represents 40% of the market cap of U.S. equities, but only 24% of earnings. So there's high hopes that this sector will continue to deliver on the earnings front.
And not only analysts have hopes for the TMT sectors, but they have hopes also for the whole economy.
Oh yeah, and it's not just that earnings will continue to do well. It's actually will even do better going into the next 12 months. So economy-wide in U.S. expectation is for earnings to accelerate from roughly 8% where we are now to growth of 13%. Notice on this slide too, for the IT sector, the expectations is you will pick up speed on earnings growth and reach a pretty impressive figure in the next 12 months, 20%, Denis. So you better hope that everything is fine.
They're drinking nice Kool-Aid, huh? Maybe. If you look at the economy and the news that we have and the data that we're collecting so far, it doesn't show that.
I don't mind if they drink Kool-Aid, but there might be too much sugar in that Kool-Aid right now, because if you look at the economic surprise index in the U.S., then it's the worst reading since 2015. So it's been a massive downward surprise recently. It doesn't mean that the economy is not growing, Denis. It's just growing much less rapidly than what we've seen in the past. And this is what you have to take into context. If your economic surprises are negative, can you actually deliver on better earnings growth? And what history suggests is, given the current reading that we're seeing on economic surprises, which is a 2 standard deviation, historically earnings are actually revised down as opposed to being revised up. So that's the challenge for equity market. Price for perfection with an economy that does not decelerate, but unfortunately that's not what we're seeing right now. Economic surprise suggests deceleration.
Yeah, to make things worse, the labor markets, keep deteriorating.
So this is a topic we've addressed in the past. So in order to boost your earnings, if you can't do it via higher sales, you have to increase your profit margins. If you increase your profit margins, you might need to reposition your hiring pace. And what we're seeing in the U.S. right now is the unemployment rate is on the rise, up above 4% for the first time since 2021. So clearly that's a big ticket item for the economy, because that's 60% of GDP in the U.S. is determined by consumer spending. I can tell you that when the unemployment rate is rising, Denis, historically, consumer spending does not accelerate.
And to keep going in the same direction, our leading economic indicator keep going downward.
Yeah, so this is where we are now. So the unemployment rate would be more coincident. So what about the outlook? Well, if you look at leading indicators in the U.S., the leading economic indicators, it's actually back to where it was at the worst of the COVID recession. So again, Denis, it's just to say that anticipating a better economy in the months ahead might be a challenge, because most indicators would suggest a weaker economy, not a stronger economy, which opens the door for rate cuts. Don't get me wrong, but will the Fed be able to cut rates aggressively given where we already are and that monetary policy remains restrictive? So again, it's a challenge for earnings growth in the months ahead.
And if we come back to Canada, we look at the jobless rate, not that good too.
Well, it was 6.5% at the national level, but if you want to dig a little bit deeper to look at younger people, 15 to 24-year-old, I mean, it's an unemployment rate above 13% for the first time in a decade. So there's got to be some frustrated parents around the table nowadays, and it is an issue. And it does show that once the economy starts doing worse, well, yeah, younger people will be hit first. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now. So there's clearly a deceleration of the economy that's ongoing right now in this country. So let's not be too greedy on earnings growth also from a Canadian perspective.
Yeah, and at the same time, we talk quite a lot about a soft landing. Is it still true?
Well, the Bank of Canada has been, going public saying that it's mission accomplished on a soft landing, or it looks good for that. I would say, well, Denis, there will always be a landing. I don't know if it's going to be soft or hard, but I can tell you in the GTA right now, the Greater Toronto Area, which is 20% of the Canadian economy, retail sales are actually contracting, and that's a reflection of deterioration in labor markets, restrictive monetary policy. Mortgage interest rate resets, right? So yes, the economy is clearly slowing from a Canadian perspective. So I don't know yet whether it's mission accomplished on a soft landing or not. I do believe that the Bank of Canada is in a position to cut rates a little bit more aggressively in the months ahead, but monetary policy will still be restrictive by the end of this year, meaning the economy will underperform.
And to wrap it up a little bit, we're seeing an economy that is slowing down, then probably more rate cuts. But at the same time, we have analysts that have a prediction of pretty nice growth of revenue of a company or bottom line of company. Then we need to be careful here.
Yeah, the next few weeks will be very telling. No, the next few weeks will be very telling. We're about to start the earnings reporting season, so let's keep an eye on that. I do believe, Denis, as you say, that expectations are too aggressive from my standpoint.
We haven't talked inflation yet. It's our favorite subject. Now you're bringing us on what's going on in the Eurozone.
Yeah, because I know, because you asked me to speak to politicians, and I have to speak to politicians, I have to speak to inflation at the same time. We saw elections in Europe where the incumbents have been defeated and the parties have been elected, whether it's UK or France, are promising to deliver on services to their people, but I'm just not sure they can be very aggressive on that front. And what that does is when you have these politicians that are promising more fiscal stimulus, well, that keeps your inflation in the service component higher, which limits the ability for central banks to cut rates. And Denis, that's a reality in the US, in Europe, even from a Canadian perspective. And that brings the great uncertainty as we look towards the next 12 months and 2025. How will the central banks be able to cut rates if politicians continue to promise to spend more? And if you promise to spend more, keep an eye on service inflation. That will determine the ability of these central banks to cut or not. Right now, I have to say some cuts are coming, but they cannot cut aggressively because of politicians.
Okay, on that, thank you, Stéfane. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. We'll see you back in September because in August, it's holiday season for us too. Then hopefully we'll see you back in September. Thank you for joining us today.